Welcome to the podcast for real-life heroines. Let's embark on a journey that unveils the extraordinary stories of everyday women who redefine what it means to be a heroine or hero. Life is a tapestry of inspiration and magic, and today's episode is no exception. Here's your host, Susanna Liller.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining me on my podcast for real life heroines. And I have a real life heroine with me, Kim Lloyd. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to say a few words about you. I was sort of tempted to get you to just let me play your stand-up comedy routine, which says a lot about you, but we'll talk about that. But at any rate, let me just share with our listeners a couple things about you, and I love how you put this on your website, which of course the website is kimlloyd.com.
KimLloydFitness.com.
Fitness, thank you. Okay, we'll repeat
KimLloydFitness.com.
that
Yeah.
at the end too. Okay, so Kim talks about herself on the website. She says, "My career path is so varied that I've become a sort of Renaissance woman. I have been, in no particular order, a newspaper reporter, a college teacher." What subject? College teacher?
English. English and composition.
Okay. I never made it teaching past junior high, but I understand the English teacher. A caregiver for senior citizens, a resident director, a sandwich artist, a salad bar attendant, a retail extraordinaire, a coach of college softball, cross country, basketball, and lacrosse, an athletic administrator, and a personal trainer. I've played in a band, done open mic nights, read at poetry readings, and started more than one blog. There was also a stint in a Catholic convent for a year. But if you want to know more about that, you'll have to buy me dinner. And so I love the stories about that in your stand-up routine.
Well, thank you.
And what Kim then tells us is that, well, what does this mean for you wanting to maybe hire her as a personal trainer? Is that she has a lot of life experience and brings that into her practice as a coach and trainer. She's developed many opinions, she tells us, on training over the years, but they are just that, opinions. There's so many people right now, Kim, as you know, intent on health and fitness and training. So these words of yours, I'm going to just read all of them because I think they're important to hear. And people can go to Kim Lloyd Fitness and read them for themselves too. But what you say is there are no absolutes in training and life. And the views I do have are not set in stone. As a coach and human, I am constantly evolving. Would that all of us felt that way? When you work with me, we outline your goals and together create a plan for achieving those goals. We use strength training as our primary tool, but fun is essential to our work together. And just as an aside, when people came to me saying, "Susanna, you need to meet Kim Lloyd. She's really funny." So that drew me in. In fact, fun is the most important piece of our work. Kindness is the second most important, and then we bring in the tool of strength training. And so here's the thing that I really wanted to get to, because in my work as a life coach, same philosophy. I have found that true change is rarely about the nuts and bolts of fitness and nutrition. You have likely spent many decades already learning and doing or not doing the right things regarding exercise and diet. And if we could see our listeners, we'd say, okay, raise your hand if this sounds relevant, and I'm raising for everybody. Yes, I will help you understand how much protein to eat, the benefits of strength training, and how to exercise without getting hurt. But my special sauce is everything else: mindset shifts, visioning, habit changes, goal setting, and accountability. When you work with me, we outline your goals and together create a plan for achieving those goals. Strength training is the primary tool. Um, so I love this. And you also say, I know what doesn't work. Cutting out entire food groups, done
Hmm.
that. Beginner workouts that aren't beginner at all. Yeah. Drastic, unrealistic changes. So anything you wanted to add to that before we get into everything else? Does that pretty much still, I mean, you're always evolving. Anything you
It's
want?
true.
Yeah.
It's true, always evolving. I think those as principles, though, they hold true. The more restrictive something might be, the less likely it is to stick. And I think most people have probably already found that for themselves. So
Yeah. I mean, when you say to me, no carbs or no anything, then all I do is think about that and want
hmm
it. And
absolutely. Yeah, human nature. Yeah.
there's a great, my husband's always sending me these funny Instagram posts, and there's one about a woman, and she's got a whole hunk, maybe you've seen it, of chocolate cake, and she's eating it like this whole thing, stuffing it in her mouth, and I'm rewarding myself for not eating sugar for one whole
I have not seen it, but that sounds just about right.
day.
Yes.
I should send it to you. So, so we have a lot to talk about, Kim, and I think that we maybe should start just your primary work in the world is as an online personal trainer. And now I'm going to ask you to just talk a few, just give us the synopsis of what you say about that when you start your stand-up routine.
Oh, well, my opening line for my graduation performance from the stand-up class that I took, which I did have a few clients attend, and I gave them a heads up, but it is that so as an online personal trainer, I write programs for clients, and I customize those programs, and then I meet with clients over Zoom once a week, and they tell me why they didn't do their workouts.
Yeah, I know. And boy, I can relate. Yeah. So
Yeah,
you
well, and all my clients were like, Yes, you are talking about me," and I was like, "Well, I mean,
we're we're
maybe
yeah,
human
definitely.
nature, human nature."
It is human nature. And so what you do, I think that's different is because of the plans are so customized, you say you start where they are. And I think that's so
Yes,
important. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So when you and I first met, so I looked back at my notes and I think it was February of 2023 in
Okay,
Starbucks.
that sounds right. Yep.
We talked mostly, I think, about your work as a personal trainer, and you had just written a book.
Correct. Yes. At that point, I had just gone out completely on my own, in my own business. So up until that point, I had, actually, no, excuse me, I had been in business for just about a year at that point, but I had been working as a trainer in person, and so I had recently gone out on my own to run my own business, to do it full time, and to work online, which gave me the flexibility to kind of be where I want to be, which is one of my personal values. Because I'm originally from Pittsburgh, which I try to make sure people know that within about 5 minutes of meeting me. So I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and I still have family there. So the ability to work from wherever was really important to me. And so yeah, so when we met, I was new on that journey, and I had recently published the book called Start Where You Are, which is also the name of a great book by the Buddhist nun Pema Chodron. And I went back and forth about whether or not I was going to use that title. And then I thought, you know what? Nope, it's the most appropriate title I can think of for all of us, certainly for the many of the clients that I work with.
Right.
So yeah.
And I'm sure we talked, in fact, I know we did, about that leap to working for yourself was your current heroine's journey. And of course, we all go on many heroine's journeys. Many times we take a leap into the unknown. And that was your one that we were talking about. I must have asked you if it was a difficult, some people they contemplate a leap, particularly going out on your own in business, which I did as well. It can be very scary. And I asked you what that was like for you. Can you remind me?
Yeah, it was a painstaking process, like I imagine it is for many people. There is this I think there's a sense at some point where, at least there was for me, I sometimes speak for everybody. For me, there was this sense that I was kind of reaching my limit with the job that I was doing. And I was also driving an hour each way to work, which was also weighing on, my personal life a lot. But so I knew probably 3 or 4 years before I made the change that I was ready to do this. I had been running Kim Lloyd Fitness as a part-time job for about 5 years prior to actually making the leap. So it wasn't that I hadn't been doing some of it. I'd been doing some, but it had been on the side. And eventually, though, it just came to a point where I couldn't. I don't know exactly how to say it, but it was time. Like I knew it was time. But for me, the hardest part really in the transition, when you do very personal work, whether you're a teacher or a coach, whatever it might be, is when you leave the students or the clients behind, and there's this sense of, and your ego gets wrapped up in it. My ego was wrapped up in it, but like, is everybody going to be okay when I leave?
Yeah.
Like leaving those relationships behind. And so that was really, I think, the most difficult part. Yes, going into business for myself was scary, but it was also just leaving some of those relationships. But once I made the decision, I gave like 3 months notice, which is a very long time. I was just excited to do it, and I was very fortunate that a number of my clients came together and they threw me a Kim Lloyd Fitness launch party. So there was like, I don't know, 70 or 80 people showed up one night to, right after I finished working at the gym to kind of send me on my way. And that was just it was my wish for everybody is that they have some sort of party like that. Because it was like a funeral, except not. But that I wish that everybody would have some sort of opportunity for people to um pay them the kind of tribute that I was very fortunate to have that night.
Mm, And so that gives me an idea because I was thinking as you said this, that of course every heroine's journey leap into the unknown, you're leaving things behind, which is why so many people don't do it because they
Mhm.
love that place where they've been and they can't think of giving that up or giving those people up. But then, yeah, what if we always somehow found a way to celebrate them? Let us know ahead of time if you're going to be leaping and we'll throw you a party.
Yes.
It's a as you know, I mean, your life has changed dramatically since you did that for many
Oh,
reasons, I know, but that in particular.
oh, 100%. And I know there's a quote around change where you do it whenever it becomes too painful, when where you are becomes too painful to
Yeah.
stay,
Right.
you're more likely to change. And the challenge though is what if that never happens? What if it's never painful enough? And so that I can appreciate that as a difficult part of the process, but I certainly was feeling that, that it was time, and and also getting support, which, I had a lot of support from friends and family,
Mm,
and like I said, clients to do the thing, to make that jump. So,
right. Did you have any threshold guardians that usually appear at the time of the leap that say, oh, don't do it. You'll regret it. You'll never make as much money as you're making now. Blah, blah,
oh,
blah.
100%. They were, I mean, they were hanging out like all around me. They were in my car on the drive to work, on the drive. I mean, yeah, they were everywhere, which was that
Yeah.
the level. I worked at a very successful gym. The owner was very successful. He was very, very driven. And so the question of whether or not I was going to be able to, make enough money to pay the bills. I mean, I'm married, I have a wife, she has a full-time job, and I always try to name that as part of my privilege because, she has an income, and, I had insurance and things like that. But I still had bills to pay. And so I will actually say that I hired a friend of mine who is actually a client who is, I forget exactly how she describes her work, but she's an intuitive. And so I actually hired her before I took the leap as a little bit of a like, hey, am I going to be okay if I do this?
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. But the threshold guardians were everywhere.
Yeah. So anybody listening, if you're hearing those voices, just know we all hear them. It goes with the territory if you're going to be trying something new and big and different. So yeah, you have to get used to it. But Kim, what I want to say is that you and I had this conversation over coffee. was February 2023, and then a lot more stuff happened to you. Um, Big things that really made a difference in your life, including getting cancer.
Hmm.
So that was a surprise, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually prior to that, my dad needed open heart surgery, and that was the first moment that it was like I was able to be home. So I stayed with my parents for around a month, and I was able to be home to help, get them to appointments and negotiate all of that stuff and continue working because I was working remotely. And so that was the first marker where I was like, yes, I am so glad that I did this. I would have never been able to take this time off.
Right.
I don't know how that would have worked previously. So that was sort of this like, yes, this. And then not long after that, I got COVID basically. And then shortly after COVID, I had this cough that wouldn't go away. And if you've had COVID and you Google long COVID, any symptom can be attributed to long COVID at this point because we're so early in the process. And so I had I went to the doctors, they said bronchitis. I kept living my life, working out, doing things, but it was getting harder and harder until finally about 10 weeks. I'd been dealing with this for about 10 weeks, and I started wheezing, and it was difficult to, walk the length of my driveway, and I was still working out. It was just taking me a long time. And the my watch, I wear a fitness watch, and the one day it said that I had burned something like 4,000 calories, and I had done nothing more than go to the grocery store. And
Mhm.
so I had just gotten a new doctor. I followed up with her. She sent me for an emergency CT scan. I was just going about my day, and she said, "You need to go get a CT scan." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, cool. I have clients, I have some stuff to do." And she was like, "You really need to go within the next hour."
Oh,
And
my
she told me I
God.
had a collapsed lung. So I went into the ER thinking that I had a collapsed lung, and I took my work with me in my backpack, and I was sitting in my little Johnny on the little stretcher, and I was writing a program for someone. And then the doctor came in, and she was like, "Why do you think you're here?" And so I said a collapsed lung, and she said, "Well, you have a large opaque structure in your mediastinal, which is the space between your chest bone basically and your lungs." And it turned out that opaque structure was a 7.5-inch mass, so it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I went into the hospital that day, and I was in the hospital for 18 days. Um, sort of dealing with that, and then dealing with what ended up being a total of 600 hours of chemo, 6 rounds, all inpatient. So, and I was able to continue working, kind of throughout that. So, yeah, that's sort of the shortest version.
Yeah, and it didn't throw you off your game. I mean, you kept doing what you had intended when you started working for yourself, and you said
Yeah.
something like it was, how did you put it? Like a great moral teacher getting cancer. Um,
Oh my goodness. I mean, it is, there is nothing quite like, well, when I say quite like, I mean the experience obviously is intense, but sitting in the sitting in that hospital room, especially, I ended up stuck in the emergency room at Midcoast, which is a smaller hospital in Brunswick, Maine, for 56 hours, I think it was. So almost 3 days. And because I was waiting for a bed at Maine Med. And so during that time, all you can do is, you don't know yet if you have cancer because I was waiting to have a biopsy. And so your thoughts really, those couple days, I had to remind myself that the thoughts create suffering. And so letting my mind go too far down the what if is really where the suffering was coming from, as opposed to, kind of being in the moment. And so my focus was very much, what do I know to be true right now? And I'm not saying I didn't freak out. I'm not saying that at all. But it was, what do I know to be true right now? And so to be able to come back and say, okay, well, I'm comfortable, I'm safe, I have some support. My wife is here, all of that kind of stuff. I have good care. So that was one of the first big teachers I feel like that I got. First big messages maybe that came. That's like, your thoughts create your suffering.
yeah.
And of course, the second piece is, you don't know what's going to happen. And so you're really starting to say, okay, well, what have I done with my life to this point? And what have I not done? And you really start thinking about, experiences and that book you want to write and that class you want to take. And so it sort of, it hits you in a very different way. Any experience like that, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that sort of takes us to you deciding that you wanted to do a stand-up, take a stand-up course because it's something you've had always wanted to do. But what had discouraged you? What about that seventh grade teacher? What happened?
Oh, yes. This is, I will also say one of the things that I did shortly after I went into business for myself is that I went with a friend of mine. She said, "Hey, I have this workshop, leadership workshop. You want to go to it?" And I didn't look up any of the details. I just said yes, which is, talk about a leap of faith. But I was like, "Sure, you're doing it. Why not?" And it was very much a somatic sort of workshop, which that's my best description of it. It's very somatic experience. It's nervous system work. It's trying to learn what your nervous system can tolerate, understanding how you respond to certain situations. But while I was at that workshop, I was reminded that one of the things I'd kind of forgotten that one of the things I always wanted to try was stand-up comedy. But I'd had an experience with a teacher when I was seventh grade, and if you've ever read The Artist's Way, you might be familiar with the wound that she encourages you to explore. A lot of us, creatives have a wound somewhere along the way, and mine, at least around, stand-up, was in seventh grade telling a joke to my teacher. I said I wanted to be a comedian, and he said, "Tell me a joke," and I did in front of the class, and of course nobody laughed. And he said, "It's all in the delivery." He said, "If I would have told that joke, I would have had people rolling on the floor." And I just sort of shrank in the moment, and I kind of shrank away from it. And it was, I mean, I thought about it like here and there, but never seriously. Um, up until, well, I mean, anyway, it was once you go through cancer, you're like, what can I tolerate? What can my nervous system tolerate? You're like, oh, okay, I could tolerate this.
Right,
So,
right. So you
yeah.
took the class and then you did the graduation, you did your routine. And I wonder if you could just say a few of the things you say about your mom, who was particularly thrifty.
Yeah, so I had two kind of bits that I told, if you will, and so each class you show up and you work on something, and so I had a number of things that I was working on and thinking about, and so the first part of my routine is about living in a convent, which is a true story, and as an aside, I am actually going to be appearing. Um, at the Blue in Portland in the near future to tell kind of a moth radio a story, if you will, about my time in the convent. So less about being funny and more just what the story is. But so that was my first part of my story. And then the second one was that I grew up very blue collar with my very thrifty mom who, used still like hangs Ziploc bags out on the clothesline and uses the same piece of aluminum foil and didn't have Tupperware, used country crock containers. So it was always very difficult to find the butter and buys things in excess so that, I've never bought a tube of toothpaste in my life. That's not really a lie. So, so yeah, those were some of the things that I talked about that, you know,
Well,
about my
so
parents. Yeah.
and you break it down so much that we're right there with you imagining, and you're looking in the refrigerator for something to eat, and you're going through the country crock, oh, those are peas, that's not what I'm looking for. And then the third one you look at is a what?
It is a skinned squirrel. I'll never forget it. I pulled the top off. I saw it like this red veiny. I know
Oh
it's
my
gross.
gosh. Oh,
And
yeah.
it's not like my family were really big hunters. My brothers did some hunting, but like none of them hunt anymore. It was not a huge thing in my family. So it was not exactly expected that there would be like a, small game in one of the country crock containers. And nonetheless, there you have it. It was there. Yeah. Lesson
Oh,
learned.
and so that teacher, your delivery, I think is fabulous. Really, really.
Well, I would be curious to know what he
Yeah,
thought now.
somebody ought to pay him a ticket to come. So, and then there was something so this, all of this, it culminates into who you are, of course, today, what has happened to you. And I want to ask you about that because we talked about it, but there was something about you on an airplane, and a guy asked you a question. What's that story?
Oh yeah, that was just about like maybe 6 weeks ago. I go back to visit my family as often as I can in Pittsburgh, but it's a long drive, and so whenever I can, I check flights and I try to hop a flight. And so this was a Thursday morning. It was like, mid-October, and I was heading home so I could see. I have a niece and a nephew. I don't have any children, but I have a niece and a nephew, and I wanted to see my nephew play football. I wanted to see my niece in the marching band. And so that's what I was heading home for. And I got on the plane. We were in the very last row, and I made some comment to the guy next to me about being very near the bathroom. I don't know why I said that. And then I don't know what made me say it, but I was like, yeah, I'm just over here living my best life. And he looked at me and said, "What is it that you do that you're able to say that?" And I, I had and hadn't thought a lot about that. So what in that moment, what I was reminded of is that, as a coach, and I don't know if you find this to be the case for you too, but I end up following certain kind of people on social media, and so I end up like with this like little world over here where I'm following people who are having these conversations and asking these questions and thinking these things, and sometimes forget mainstream, what maybe everybody's doing. And it was a reminder, this conversation that I was having with this guy who was working in tech, has a family, the sole provider, the main provider, and was feeling just very stuck in this job. And so, we ended up having this really long conversation about, um, he was just asking a lot of questions. And so it was an interesting conversation. It was, but it was a really good reminder that, well, first of all, again, how privileged, like, I am to be in that position, but just maybe how few people, I don't know if I want to say have that opportunity, or like maybe maybe this is what popped into my mind, so I'm going to go with this. But part of my story that I'm telling about living in the convent is the invisible playbook that I was following, that I felt it was very scripted. It was, you graduate from high school, you go to college. Now, no one in my family had gone to college, but
Hmm.
my parents expected that and I expected it. But it was, you go to college, you graduate, you get a job, you get married, you have a family, you live your life. And I think I started to really struggle with that playbook for a bunch of reasons. But I think there are many, many people that live that and then get to maybe, 40s or 50s and start saying, this isn't working for me, or maybe even sooner than that. But I, that was what that conversation really made me think about, was that sort of invisible playbook that we're all, at least it feels like many of us are exposed to.
Yeah. And what a great question to be asked. And I can only assume the energy and the kind of light about you and sitting down, plunking next to him and being able to have a conversation. I bet he got a lot out of it.
We talked the whole way. We talked on our entire flight, and he was sad to know that his next flight, we were not going to be on the exact same flight the next time around. So we parted ways, but it was a very energetic conversation,
I believe
for
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so interesting. And you talking about it that, we do surround ourselves with similar kinds of people and me too, what I watch online, people who are informing me, but also I resonate with them. And and that does have us miss out on everybody else who isn't in that particular bubble. I mean, jeepers, we've been talking a lot about this with the election and the need to get to know everybody, not just the people that sound and look like us, right? But
Yep.
yeah, so one thing you said to me about all of this, here you go, you take this leap to work for yourself. And when we take leaps, we don't know where we're going to end up. We say we're on the road to adventure. We're going into the unknown, and it truly is. The threshold guardians are yammering, and things happen. And what did you say was kind of the culmination for you of all that unfolded? And it still is, because as you said, you're still evolving, and that's the mark of a true heroine, as you know, you're always, there's more growth. But how can you sum it? And this is not the question I'm going to ask you at the end. This is getting back to something you said to me. The genesis of the culmination of all these things is, do you remember?
I do not.
Oh,
Like, I do not. I'm like, tell me more.
okay. Is a gratitude to myself
Uh,
for me taking that leap to work for myself.
mm,
That's huge because, um, again, for the people that are waiting, I'm going to wait till the time is right, or I don't know enough. I have to learn more before I do this, or here you are, you did it. Things really swatted at you on the road,
mhm.
including cancer, and you said to me, and you can revise it if it's not still true, but you said gratitude that I did this, that I took the leap.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's in particular that first moments, the first moments of realizing that my dad needed to have a major surgery. I'm going to back up for a second and say that one of the things that I had done in 2020 was I really committed to a vision board, envisioning, and that's not something I'd ever really done before. And it was like I struggled with visioning because the way I'd seen it done, the gym owner that I worked for was very good at it, but he did it by like writing out a point in the future, and he would just write that like this is. He would write the details of a day in the future, and he was very good at that. And I really struggled with that. And then I was working with someone, actually, my coach, Amy Wood was my coach, and this is 2020. And so she reframed for me and said, okay, well, how do you want to feel? Like, and so I chose some feeling words and I put them on post-it notes because I'm a commitment phobe in some ways, and so I put the post-it notes on there, and so for instance, it was I wanted to feel like I had autonomy, I wanted freedom, I wanted flexibility, I wanted this went hand in hand with a values exercise, which is also really important to me. But so underneath some of those feeling words, it was like, okay, well, what are the actions underneath that? And underneath one of them was that it might have even been balanced, maybe was the word, but one of them was that I go home to see my parents as often as I want and as often as they need, or my family. And then next to that was I have dinner with my wife every night because I worked so far away, we rarely had dinner. And so when I was able to be home for my parents, that board, it's still in my office. It's actually over here. My new one's behind me. But looking at that, thinking about that statement and the gratitude of like, yes, like this right here saying, yeah, mom and dad, don't worry about it. I'll be here as long as you need. This is why I wanted to do the thing, and it was just so affirming. So yeah, gratitude that I had made that change. And also affirming, like there were an odd number of things, not odd, the universe is, you know, it's not odd to the universe, but there were many, many things that affirmed my decision when I did it. And so, but yeah, that was part of the gratitude. But and since then, that vision board, there are many, many things that are true now that were not true in 2020 when I sat down with that. So I'm a, I think I have my clients do that. I have my clients do their values and do visioning. I don't, not necessarily goal setting, not necessarily achieving, but I do believe I'll straight up like when you do a values exercise, I'm going off on a little tangent here. I
Okay,
apologize.
go.
But when you do a values exercise, which I had finally done, and I realized that my number one value or one of my top three values is freedom, whether you want to call it freedom, flexibility, whatever it is. Money was not in my top three. Yes, wanting to make a living and do things is there, but number one was freedom and flexibility. And once I knew that, the moving forward to working for myself where I would have that made sense. And so in the way that it went for me too was to gradually I reduced my work at the gym. And I started doing that within about 6 months, maybe after doing that vision statement. So it wasn't a surprise to anybody when I left. Well, to my coworkers, it wasn't. Um, but doing that visioning, those values, helped me to start to take action steps toward ultimately what was going into business for myself. So I should also say it wasn't necessarily one big leap. It was, it happened in increments.
Right, right. And I know you know that Amy and I used to work together and do
Hmm.
that visioning exercise with people, and I still do it too. And it is amazing looking back at those vision boards, what has
Hmm.
happened. Um,
Hmm.
so it's obvious. I mean, you talk about the universe. I think you quote different places on your website, different Buddhist quotations. What you said about suffering, it's your thoughts that make you suffer. So obviously, you have a spiritual journey that accompanies you on your regular daily journey. Is there a practice in particular that you find helpful?
I really work towards meditation, and I don't always do it. I'm following a 21 days with Chopra at the moment about abundance.
Yeah.
So I work really hard towards I like a walking meditation and also, meditation in the morning. So I would love to say that I do it every day. I don't, but I do work towards doing it more often than not.
Well, I hate to come to this final question, but I think I have to let you go and do your great work in the world. So I'm going to ask the question. We've talked about so many things, Kim, and we could talk about more, I know. And there are people that have lots going on right now, and they can only take in so much of every wise thing you said. But if you were to say, if there was only one thing that you would remember from what I said today to you, talking with Susanna, I want you to remember this.
Know your values.
Hmm.
What pops into my mind is follow your curiosity. My curiosity, there's actually a quote from Rainer Maria Rilke that it's about living the questions. And it's be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart. And it's that essence. Living the questions is following your curiosity. And um, there's also, though, I believe that being able to do that starts with taking a little bit of time to understand truly, truly, truly what's important to you in like a top three kind of a thing. And
Hmm.
so the thing I told the guy on the plane, I emailed him a values exercise. The thing I told a woman in my stand-up group who was like, I want to be able to do more of this. I don't have enough space in my life, is sit down with your values. And if you can carve out time to do that and really have a sense of like, yes, the temptation with values is you're like, all of this is important to me.
Right.
And Brene Brown is like, choose two. I'm like, let's choose 3 to 5. I believe that when you do that, it becomes it becomes a guiding force that you filter a lot of your decisions through. And so if you're on the cusp of making a leap and you suddenly are like, you know what, family is number one for me, and the thing getting away in the way of me spending more time with my family is X, then sometimes it just lays it out. Your values, I think, they're floating around. You might have an idea what they are, but
Right.
if you sit down and spend some time doing it, I really believe that if you're out there listening to this, that is the best thing you can do for yourself.
So good, Kim. And do you use an exercise Brene Brown puts out there, or do you have your own?
I've sort of created my own, but it's based on a bunch of different things. The one that I do like, and I've seen different variations of it, has you basically you set a timer for 2 minutes, and I'm happy to share it with you if you want to put it in the show notes.
Let's do that.
Um,
Let's do
it's essentially, you have all of these words and you circle what's important to you, And then from there, you'll find similar words that can be boiled down into categories. And then you kind of give those categories a word. And so I'm happy to share that.
Yeah,
But there's a lot of ways to do it, but I do like that
right.
variation.
Wonderful. I'm so glad we got to this point because I think you're leaving people with a very valuable, it just is such a clarifier. So KimLloydFitness.com. The way people can reach you is through the website. But
Absolutely. Yeah, you can request an appointment with me right from my website. You can find me on social media. Instagram is the one I tend to do most these days, but and it's Kim Lloyd, Lloyd. It is funny, if you just go to kimlloyd.com, I think you get a supermodel. At least you used to at one point. That is not me. I'm not a blonde bombshell. That is not me.
okay, all right.
But you can find me on Instagram at kimlloydfitness.com, as well as LinkedIn and Facebook under Kim Lloyd Fitness.
And all of this will be in the show notes, and as will the values exercise. So, all right, Kim, this has been great. So much good stuff. I knew this was going to be such a fun time talking with you today. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And everyone listening, I hope you will continue to listen to these podcasts for real life heroines. There'll be somebody else next month. And I will see you then. Take care and have a great holiday.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the podcast for real life heroines. Your time and presence mean the world to us. If you're hungry for more inspiration and ready to craft your own heroine story, connect with Susanna outside of the show. Visit SusannaLillard.com to discover her courses and programs designed to empower you on your journey. Until next time, may your days be filled with the courage and strength of a true heroine. Stay inspired.